And happy Monday. How's it going? Canton Barbell and here with Dr. Michele back at it on a Monday.
What's up?
How's it going?
Good, man. Tired, bro. Tired.
Yeah, I hear you. This is definitely our busiest time of year. So we'll get, I don't know how yours plays out, but we definitely get flooded with some busy schedules, some constant,
Yeah,
even when I'm not training, just doing
I
something,
know.
talking to somebody, which is great stuff. I actually enjoy it, but it definitely, I hear you. It definitely can run your bad.
Ragged.
Yeah,
I know, like, you want to see my dinner?
sure.
Right here, waiting for me when we finish.
Nice and colorful.
Um, yeah, so do you remember we had that Ohio Tactical Officers Association conference?
Yes.
Well, that was today.
Oh, okay.
And all that preparation that we put in finally has, finally happened. And dude, I am exhausted from all the logistics of setting it up, and then we presented for 4 hours today.
Wow.
Yeah, to a bunch of law enforcement officers and military and stuff.
Oh, great. Um, so is that kind of I mean, obviously general, physical fitness and stuff, but what was some of the stuff, if you could go into a tad more detail that you guys talked about to them?
Fuel, move.
The basics. Good. Okay,
Bro,
so awesome. So I guess I'd ask, when you're talking to a group like that, tactical, um, just, a couple rapid fire points that come to mind specifically with those guys that you guys, that differ from other populations.
well, I mean, what's the obvious thing, Mike? What is the obvious thing that separates the? I'm answering your question with a question. What's the obvious thing that separates them from our traditional athletes?
Um, Obviously their nature of, you know, what they do, is very unconventional and unpredictable. They wear gear. You know,
Yeah, but some of our athletes wear gear too, right? So,
uh,
but yeah, so
they're middle-aged adults a lot of times.
yeah, I mean, we work with some Gen Pop
Sure.
too. This is totally off the cuff that I'm asking Mike. So, don't, you know,
Wasn't as
don't, don't,
crazy, I guess.
don't at me, bro. Okay, so he's just thinking off the top of his head. Tactical scenarios,
Mm-hmm.
live fire,
Okay.
number one thing. Think about the stress. So, fuel, move, recover, our platform, advanced athletics platform. Where Mike fits into that is primarily the move part, and then he touches on the fuel and the recover part. And then obviously, like, I'm squarely in the move part and also the recover part. I'm halfway in the recover part. And then we have, Lindsay and Allie, our dietitians, that are, they're squarely in the fuel part. But number one thing, pal, right? If you think about it, tactical scenarios. So putting their self in the line of duty and also the things that they see. So their ability to manage the stress that they have to deal with as a regular part of doing their job. The other thing too is that, you know what I mean? Like, think about Kelly Starrett, his first book, Supple Leopard.
Right.
You know where that do you know the origin of that
So I remember
story?
hearing him talk about it was essentially that um,
Did we talk about this already?
maybe, but I know that part of it is that his origin is if a leopard has to hunt prey, it doesn't have to warm up for 15 minutes to be at its best to pounce on be at its best physically to pounce on prey or be to move in the way it needs
To
to
go.
outmaneuver its prey. Yeah.
Yeah. It goes from sitting in the shade, just chilling or
Yeah.
eating to go,
Right.
chase. It's not like, hold on, let me stretch out my hip flexors
Right.
first.
Right. Yeah.
Right?
The biggest that I remember at least was kind of the main concept behind
No,
it.
that's entirely it.
Yeah.
That's entirely the comp the well, I mean, that's the origin story behind the name of the book,
Mhm.
because he would talk to these special forces guys, And they're like, we want to be like leopards. And he was like, well, what are you talking about? And it's like, well, leopards don't stretch. You know, they go from doing nothing to doing full go. You know.
Yeah, sprint,
It's,
jump,
yeah,
essentially.
exactly. And so the special forces guys are like, well, we want to become kind of like supple leopards, where we're able to move, we have full motion, full flexibility, strength everywhere we need it, and then as soon as duty calls, we're ready to jump and go. You know, same thing for them, whether we're talking about policemen or military. You know, especially operators. Operator is the word that we use for people who are actually like, you know, going after bad guys with guns, you know, that kind of thing. So everybody else is support staff. So everybody, operators get all the attention. You know, they're like the quarterbacks. No one gives a shit about the offensive line, even though the offensive line is more important than the quarterback. You know, because if the quarterback isn't protected, those of us that are Browns fans, you know, from Northeast Ohio, you know, we've had terrible quarterbacks and they just get destroyed, you know, because they never had good protection, you know.
Right.
So anyways, the point is that these operators, they don't practice, they don't train, you know, they don't, you know, they don't have time to warm up before they get into firefights. Same thing with our police officers. You know, you go from, so this is the other thing, not only do they have tactical scenarios, but also they go from usually a very low arousal state, sitting, or, you know what I mean, like standing maybe, to all of a sudden they're in a high-speed pursuit, or they're in a live fire situation, life or death situation. So those are the two biggest things. And then everything kind of fits around that, Mike, right? So how do I train? So if you have to work third shift and you're working overnight, you know, whether you had a tactical scenario that you had to deal with or not, during, even if it was a chill night, you know, it's like, when is the best time for them to work out? It's not always. If you have trouble falling asleep, you know, because it's during the day and you're not supposed to be asleep during the day, then these people shouldn't be training in the morning after they get off work. So they need to switch and they need to train before they go to work, you know? And so it's all the conventions, Mike, that we develop for our typical Gen Pop or our athletes kind of goes out the door. Like, we have to be willing to give up those standards, maybe not standards, what's the right word? Routine, you know? So because everything changes for them because of, you know, the sacrifice that they make in order to, you know, do what they do for a living, you know? What we talked about a lot, and what we talk about just in general, is that they have super skills, not superpowers. They are ordinary people who do extraordinary things.
Right.
So, you know, you see something tragic. What happens is that, you know, their ability to manage stress is also important. You know, so it's like, instead of going home and drinking a 12-pack, you know, instead, let's go and get out with your friends, or let's come to the gym. Let's have a healthy outlet for your stress, you know? So yeah, so things like that. And then think of how we have to orientate their nutrition around that. You know, a lot of them get into trouble because they work in a squad car. So they're stuck. They can't, you know what I mean? They can't just like sit down and prepare a nice meal in the middle of the day like maybe you and I can if we, you know, we block out our noon hour or whenever we take lunch.
Yeah.
You know, you can bring some ingredients and, you know, make yourself a nice meal or whatever. And so for them, they're stuck in their squad car, and then what you're going to do, convenient, usually not the food.
Yeah.
So giving them some tips about how to more easily implement healthy habits,
Yeah.
and or good routines,
Yeah.
without them feeling like they have to, you know what I mean, like be like these super neurotic, like perfectly like organized machines.
Can I hop in real quick with the nutrition thing? That's where, you know, because I get into that with, like, if you work like 12-hour nurse shifts, like, you know, or something like that, at our place, and some of the somewhat outdated nutrition information, obviously, you know, you've got your dietitians there that know more than me, but we know that it's not like a concrete thing where it's like, you know, your meal frequency has a huge role on your daily metabolism. It's more of a snowball effect. You know, day to day. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Are you meeting that deficit or that maintenance level or whatever it might be?
Yeah.
But that's where I think it gets tough. Whereas like if people are exposed to this kind of stuff and they get frustrated because they think they should be, well, if I'm not eating my 6 to 8 meals or whatever small.
Yeah.
But if we
Or if you're not eating your body weight in kale or something like that.
Sure, yeah. But if we could take a police officer and say, okay, maybe one big meal for you, and then some small, easily packable half meal snack or whatever.
Yeah.
Maybe the best option for you for consistency is one big meal when you can, and then small snacks. But that might not seem, again, from like looking at some of the more regurgitated nutritional philosophies that you hear in the magazine or whatever, that might not work for some police officer.
These people, yeah.
This X shift or whatever it might be. So,
or it may not work for like especially like swimmers. You know that because you work with swimmers a lot.
Mm-hmm.
Those guys and gals are freaking nuts.
Yeah.
They go and swim. They go to the pool. First thing in the morning, like 4 a.m.
Yeah.
They get a 90-minute workout in. Then they go to school or college all day. Then they go get their dry land work. Then in the afternoon, then they got to go do all their homework and stuff. So remember, Mike, or not you remember, but finish this ism. The best exercise plan is the one
that you can adhere to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
The one you like, the one that you will do.
Yeah.
So the best nutrition plan or meal plan is the one.
Same that you can do.
Yeah. Same thing, right? So you might fall in. You might do more of an OMAD, right, kind of thing. One meal a day. That's what OMAD stands for. And that might work better for you whenever you're on third shift.
Yeah, and it sounds so weird and like not like to the like outside looker, like one meal a day. Like, what do you?
Yeah, what are you talking about?
Yeah,
but it's been shown that the body doesn't care about calories. Now, the one caveat to that is when you work out, because there's a certain amount of energy that you need to work out, and then there's a replenishment process that should go on after you work out. And again, it's not like the end all be all, but it's to optimize the benefit. The other thing too is that by eating, you shut off your cortisol levels, which is your stress hormone.
Right.
And we care a lot, especially these folks, because they're the intensity of their job, is so high stress necessarily. Because think of how anxious you would be, if like you had a client that was going to come in. Think of all the clients you work with. Think about all the different body types and movement styles and goals and all these things. Imagine if you had your entire list, of clients that you could potentially work in, not in one day, but in a week or in a month. Okay. Think about if you were at the gym and you were just sitting there at your desk and you had absolutely no idea who was going to walk through that door for a workout.
Yeah.
Think of how stressful that would be. You know what I mean? It could be, Mike who comes in who, wants to build strength and, is not a good deadlifter, but a really good squatter. Or Michele might come in and he wants to like lose some weight, do more Metcon stuff. He's not really focused on, like trying to maximize his strength anymore. Or, while and like work on his asymmetrical positioning and and unilateral strength and stability. So imagine, those are just 3 examples, things I made up. So imagine all the different people we work with in a time scale of a week or a day or a month, and imagine that's kind of what they do. They could have any number of scenarios.
Yeah.
Somebody could run off the road into the river. There could be an active shooter. There could be a hostage situation. There could be, somebody like a public disturbance. Any of these things could happen at a split second, and that's what they have to be ready for. Think of how stressful that would be.
I mean, like first time things, like stuff you've never seen. Like,
yeah.
Once you work in the gym enough, I mean, there's always like some first that you deal with, but usually after a few years, you've probably seen about everything before. Like,
Yeah.
Something like that every day is probably a first. You know what I mean? Like,
Yeah.
a situation that you have to deal with.
Yeah. And on top of that, think about the fatalities that they deal with. God forbid if they get shot at, get wounded in the line of duty, or God forbid they have to take somebody's life. So think of just how how difficult it would be. No wonder a lot of them struggle with their own wellness.
Definitely.
Really hard to not dive into your unhealthy coping mechanisms with something that's so challenging as that.
Sure. Kind of going, probably a pretty good segue. We kind of talked a lot of nutrition there. But when it comes to the training and the effect on the nervous system, with these type of things in the field, when you're doing, these high stress situations, going for, into sympathetic at the drop of a hat.
Yeah.
I don't, maybe you dove into a little bit of this, working a little bit more with me, but, eventually I would say that can tax the nervous system, which plays right into your training, your high intense, training. That's your heavy lifts, your jumps, your, if you're into the Olympic stuff, that's your, high burst, high CNS stuff. That probably takes a toll, if you have stress in the field, into your training.
Yeah, I mean, you know how it is, Mike. It's hard for people, those of you that are listening. It's hard for you to appreciate what we're talking about unless you have some relevance to this, and or if you actually have developed a little bit of mastery of those lifts that Mike just laid out, because they're really hard. Most people don't perceive them to be as hard as what they are because you're just not good at them.
Yeah.
That doesn't mean you're a bad person. You just haven't developed that skill yet, So people need to appreciate that, like once we start training that way, you then can start to develop a mastery of that form of activation, And so what we can do is, Mike, is that we can challenge them in unusual ways by maybe having them do like a high neuro workout, maybe have them do some dynamic effort. And then afterwards, immediately, as soon as they're done, you're going to have them get up and have a bunch of make like a hexagon of colored like cones around. They have to stand in the middle, and then you call out a color. They have to find it and then go touch that cone.
Yeah.
And then you're going to do let's say you're going to call out 7 cones and you're going to keep track of it. And the goal is that after they just challenge their nervous system, they then have to slow down and start thinking and make good decisions and correct decisions. Yeah. So then you count how long it takes them to go through a 7 cone, tapping 7 cones, and then how long it takes them to do that correctly. So then that's how, we start to hone that ability, in the gym, because we can't simulate live fire. We can't simulate there's a traffic fatality, whatever. But what we can simulate is stress.
Yeah.
And stress is just stress, Now the mental and the professional aspects that come along with that, then obviously that's something, that's different, But yeah, don't feel like, even if your job is a nurse, you know what I mean? An ER nurse, like think of what their jobs are like, right? Or an ER, anybody that works in the ER, it could be like a chill night one night, and then the next night it's like you're dealing with all kinds of crazy stuff, So by us like doing some heart rate variability training, we by us doing some like supersetting, high intensity stuff with maybe more like single leg balance kind of stuff, all of a sudden now you're having to really switch gears, and then you learn how to control your neuromuscular system and your ability to breathe and your ability to think.
Yeah, it's interesting stuff. Or even, like you say, as a nurse, I mean, it could even be, your shift changes at the drop of a dime. You know what I mean? Someone comes rolling in, it's a slow night. Here comes somebody rolling in that just had some crazy tragic thing happen, whatever it is.
Yeah, literally anything.
But yeah, you mentioned there, so, kind of feed off me if, this is kind of how you guys view it, but it's like to certain degrees, the body doesn't recognize specific stress. It doesn't know, what I mean? It doesn't know the difference between, X, Y physical, or mental thing happened. It knows stress, right? It's just like, it's the same kind of thing where, certain exercises can be different angles, but at the end of the day, our body knows stimuluses and stress. So, if you do a really tough set of 6 reps with a certain weight, or you did a little lighter and did a tough set of 10, there's not a major physiological difference in how the body adapts to that stress. It recognized a certain level of intensity and has to adapt to it. So I like that. And cool what you mentioned there, again, how we can kind of dig into, without even trying to look like we're doing too much, simulate some of these, types of psychological situations.
Yeah. And this goes back to what we talked about last time, Mike, in that, a program should be different because it has to be different, not because it can be different. Right. The thing that, it's our job as physios and coaches, performance coaches, strength coaches, to think about and work on the nitty gritty. But in general, stimulus is stimulus. If you're out of shape or, we've got a new athlete in, you can do sets of 6, sets of 8, sets of 5, you can do a pyramid. It doesn't really matter. You might be trying to accomplish something else, teaching them what it feels like to produce force through a high rep range versus produce force, for a low rep range. Yeah. But otherwise, the stimulus is a stimulus. You're not really going to make that big of a change. It's for people for OGs who have been doing things for years, decades even, where they are so advanced, they've been training so hard for so long that you are seeking out any way, any opportunity to make things a little bit different, so that they actually can respond, because for them, they've been training so hard for so long that things don't that their body is so capable and so adaptable that you have to work really hard to find a stimulus that they aren't ready for.
Right. It's kind of diminishing, return.
Yeah. Yep.
I always tell, if I get to working with someone for over a year, a lot of times for that first year, it's like every day is better, is a PR or, a rep PR, weight PR. And eventually, you reach a day where it's like they don't get the PR, and it's like, and I always say it real simple. It's like I'm in my 17th year of lifting. If I PR'd every time, then I would go lift that car over my head. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
It's obviously not going to do it every time, so you're going to run into those. It's really, it's a frustrating thing, but it's a good thing. It's like you're becoming a veteran. Like you have to start. Your body has truly adapted to being strong. Like it's used to being strong now.
I know, and that's the problem, Mike, with these places that post on their social media, just maxes, or they create this culture, or they create this perception that working out is just about hitting maxes all the time.
Yeah.
And that's not the case. It's more process driven, it's cool to celebrate that you're getting better, but there's lots of ways that we measure getting better other than, just adding your max out to our Instagram story, so you guys need to appreciate that there are a lot of different variables that we can seek, maybe you're one of those people that, you bench press and your one side's a lot weaker than the, or no, weaker the bar moves a little bit on you.
Yeah.
And so the goal is to be able to do your same max, but be able to hit it to be able to do it with less wiggle in the bar. Or every time you squat, as you start to come out of the bottom, your butt raises up. And so we get you to the point to where now you can come back up and you don't have that, but your weight hasn't changed.
Those are my favorite ones. Yeah. Those are my favorite ones. I mean, I love the weight PRs, obviously, and they come with the territory, but
yeah.
Some kids or athletes struggling more. But when the quality, really, and the quality always comes with at least as much weight, if not, right? So, but when I can see the quality, that's when I know a kid's really getting it, because I'll tell kids sometimes, it's like, you're never going to go heavy. You don't say it nicely, but I'm like, you're never going to go heavy if you don't fix this here, right?
Yeah.
If you instantly, if as soon as the deadlift bar gets a little bit heavy and it instantly pulls your shoulders down, you're never going to go heavy if you don't fix that. Like, yeah, you lifted it up quick, but it still pulled your, like, you know what I mean? It's not even a heavy weight for you, but you're defaulting, into this, this movement fault. So, the increases in quality, seeing like the body adapt to doing stuff better, is one of my favorites to see. And again, yeah, it's not as cool to post. And I honestly, I probably don't do it as as much as I should, because you just don't think to like, look how much better quality this is. But those are, and it's for everybody. Obviously for the guys you're talking about, tactical guys, they're not as young as they used to be. So that stuff's really important for those guys, to maintain ranges of motion, movement quality as you get older and work physically.
Yeah, and the thing is that about the quality thing and posting it thing, the power of that is the reflection before and after. So sometimes we can do a profile of somebody so that we can give a comparison of their video before or photo before and then after. And then like that's where that has that weight. But that takes a little bit of production. Sure. Those things don't get fixed in a session.
Right. It's not my thing to do. Like when I watch a new kid and his movement is just garbage, I'm like, I'm going to get my phone out and record this. You know what I mean? Like, I should. Like whether it's to post for me or to show them and their parents, like beyond this, is he a lot stronger? Like, yeah, he's moving this much weight, but look at this. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Probably should do it a little more often, but you're right.
Yeah. And the thing is that I'd say that he is a lot stronger, and something that is more, well, yeah, I think you're right. So it depends on exactly how you define it. By the most strict definition, no, he's not stronger if the weight doesn't change, right? Because it's all about the weight. But something more important happens is that he has better control. So if he has better control, he's going to be able to apply that control to other exercises. Yeah. And you will never be able to build control on weight. Yeah. So if we allow that to happen, then if we come back, and say now we're going to get that control better, it's just not going to happen. No. So you're going to have to back down anyways, and that becomes very hard mentally to do, Yeah.
So the potential for strength is way up. You may not be actually strong, but your potential for strength.
Exactly. Yeah. So I think that's important. And then also just with the tactical crowd, everybody comes in a different shape or size, other than getting into physical confrontations, with civilians or whatnot, perpetrators and the like. That's the only scenario where your size and your actual strength and your ability to, like defend yourself, being strong, having, actually knowing martial arts or some kind of self-defense technique. That's where it becomes very important. But other than that, it's mostly like efficiency. It's mostly like, can I switch on my sympathetic nervous system at the drop of a hat? And then more importantly, once the pursuit ends, once the confrontation with a civilian ends, once the tactical scenario ends, you've reached the house, you've served the warrant, whatever the case might be, can you then come back down? Yeah. Which is even more important because you spend a lot more time, tactical athletes spend a lot more time as regular people like you and I than they do as like what they train for. Now, everything that they train for is to prepare them for those tactical scenarios. But that doesn't change the fact that they spend most of their life existing like us. But the problem is that the demands of those tactical scenarios and the sacrifice that's unnecessarily made worsen their ability to be able to live a thriving life whenever they aren't in those tactical scenarios.
Yeah, it's interesting. That's kind of, it's almost like training an athlete in their own, right? It's like you train a football player, and you think intense, but really what is it? On Friday night, you're spending a total of 6 minutes going hard, or whatever it might be. You know what I mean? It's like the whole week, you're practicing all that, but your true performance is, a few seconds at a time for 3 hours, and that's it, right? You put in hours and hours and hours of the prep time, so you're at your best for that, for those high intense moments. Difference being, of course, plenty, but it's
applicable.
But but it's similar. It's similar with training an athlete. You're putting in, you know, um, the work for those short moments where you have to be at your best.
Yep.
Good deal. So a lot about police there. So you had police, some military there. Anything real specific to them? I mean, you know, first of all, was it all branches? Was it specifically? We've got the Army PT test coming up that eventually switching completely over. Was it? What was that like?
Yeah, it was, I think, a balance. First of all, I'll say I'm not sure
Okay.
who was represented. We didn't ask that. Yeah. But from my understanding from previous information that I've had is that all branches were represented, in the attendees who signed up. But whether or not which ones came to our class, that I'm not sure about. Now, I think in general for them, again, almost none of these folks are operators because almost no one in the armed forces are operators. Again, it's like football. Everybody plays football, and it's like, oh, are you a quarterback? It's like, no, because 10 out of 11 guys are not quarterbacks, So, well, actually, if you think about it, Mike, if we include defense, 21 out of 22 guys are not quarterbacks.
Yeah.
So the daily life of somebody in the military is not that much different than any of us. You have a regular job. You need to be focused, sleep well, eat well, and then take care of yourself physically so you're able to do your job, be efficient, not make mistakes, and then go on and live your personal life, as anybody else would. So that is that we wanted to build good routines with military folks the same way that we would build good routines with our nurses and our construction workers and, and our regular, our regular Gen Pop that we otherwise work with, The one caveat to them is deployment.
Right.
So they have to train. So it's good to prepare them so that they are able to be really like ruthlessly consistent and to thrive while they're abroad, And so whether that's like what you do is like while they're stateside, you might purposefully plan, we're going to do a month-long training session where you're going to train every single day.
Yeah.
And so again, this is all about simulating stress, kind of like what we talked about with law enforcement, in that what you're going to do is you're going to train every day for a month. You're going to come in to see me, our normal 3 days, and then we'll put together a program. It doesn't have to be complicated. It just means that you have to do something, and we're pushing you out of your comfort zone.
Yeah.
So it's going to be a lot harder for you to get good meals when you have your time taken up. It's going to be a lot harder to get good meals when you're not sleeping as well.
Right.
It's going to be a lot harder for you, or it's going to be a lot more important for you to consider your, having good, healthy outlets, mental stress outlets, because you're training so hard. So what we do is we take let's say 4 weeks and just, really challenge them a lot. And it's like, how did you respond? How did you respond from, having that month? Where did you start to falter? So then whenever they're deployed, and they're in the theater, then what we can do is that, okay, so remember that time that you went a month and we challenged you in all these new ways? Now think about that. Now you're going to be abroad, and so you're going to be in a different country. The PX will still be there, so you'll be able to you'll have a lot of availabilities that are there. But now, because we challenged you in a high stress environment artificially, you should be better able to figure out how to do this because the stress is a little bit lower. I mean, obviously you're abroad. What you're actually doing might be more challenging. But the fact that we really challenged you, we can't simulate that part, but what we can simulate is just a really stressful month.
Yeah, and it's like anything else, right? Our nervous system and our muscular system can make adaptations, right?
Yep.
So it gets a little deep into science for me, but, you expose the nervous system to a stressor, it takes in the stressor and it adapts at like a cell I could say, cellular level,
Yeah.
you know, to, you know, essentially prepare for a similar situation to happen again. It's just like lifting weights, right? You expose your muscles to load, tension, stress in that way. They respond at a cellular level, you know, enlarge, you know, become more efficient contracting, contract faster from the, you know, neuromuscular level, and you know, gets ready to do that same thing again. And that's why you got to go heavier, you know, heavier or harder the next time.
Yeah.
You know, from a nervous system level, you know, if you're not, you know, if you're just like live silver spoon your, you know, your whole life and try to throw yourself into that, I mean, you're gonna, you know, your stress is gonna break you down quick.
Yeah.
It's just like, you know, kind of the adage where, you know, some of these like, you know, sometimes like if you bring in like a kid from more inner city Canton or Akron, you know what I mean, and maybe they had a, you know, a little bit, you know, kind of rougher surroundings growing up. It's like you can't get them, you know, stuff doesn't get them down, you know what I mean? But you bring a kid from, you know, a little bit more of, again, kind of that silver spoon kind of thing,
Yeah.
and, you know, little mishaps in the gym, and it's like a breakdown. So
Yeah.
I think it's the same kind of concept, really.
Yeah, man. And so there's two things that go along with that. The first thing is that, I mean, we love all the kids we work with, whether you're inner city or you're suburban. And, you know, the fact is that you know, if you're a suburban kid, you know, and your parents do well, middle class, upper class, you know, you're just not used to dealing with as much stress, at least like real life, like
Right.
where am I going to get a meal stress, you
Yeah.
know, or like, am I going to be able to like pay for gas stress? And so there's nothing wrong with that. It's, you know, be proud that your parents, you know, were able to, you know, make their way and have, you know, and raise you with a good life. But just appreciate that you're not going to be as used to defeat or failure in that regard. Maybe you had it in a different way and you're more used to it. But in general, you know, having things handed for you, which again, as a kid, that's a normal thing. That's okay, you know, to have things handed for you. It's not like you're 40, you know, and things are being handed to you. So the point is, though, is that these kids who grew up in these rougher neighborhoods, you know what I mean? They're not they appreciate being able to come into AC and train, you know? It's like they also don't have anything else to do. They don't have an Xbox and a Switch and a a PS5. You know, instead, you know, they may not have anything. Hell, they may have some piece of shit smartphone. They don't have the nice new iPhone. You know, the battery dies, you know, it overheats, you know, so they're not going to spend as much time on their phone. They're going to come in and train. They'll do something else with their time, you know?
Yeah.
So yeah, so just appreciating that your circumstances have a lot to do, really impact, you know, how you respond to stress or what kind of stress that you're more sensitive to. Now, the other thing I just want to say, I want to add, Mike, is that when we talked about tactical folks, whether they're military or law enforcement or even firefighters, EMT, it's not necessarily that by training in novel ways or stressful ways, you will adapt your body. I mean, your body will adapt, like Mike was saying, at a cellular level, a neural level. But just because you are getting that adaptation, your body isn't getting necessarily prepared for whatever it is you're going to do. Rather, I mean, sometimes it can, you know, kind of like what we've been talking about on this episode. But instead, focus on the fact that you are learning how to deal with stressful events.
Yeah.
So by challenging yourself in new ways or stressful ways, you then are better prepared mentally to figure out a way to do this. Because I've challenged myself with other things in the past, even though this is different.
No, that's great. We lost you a little bit in the middle, but I caught pretty much, you know, what you were saying. So just like, and that kind of ties into, you know, again, similar to training. It's like we don't train our guys to swing a baseball bat harder, or we don't train our guys to throw a pitch harder. We give our guys exposure to those similar type events, right, and give them the baseline to produce force that goes in behind that. Same kind of thing. It's like, you know, you're not training them to psychologically adapt in the right way when someone puts a gun in your face, right?
Yeah.
But
Yeah.
again, the baseline to adapt to a stressful situation. Again, it's kind of funny how it all ties. How neurological and muscular kind of tie in together and function similarly. But yeah, same thing. I like that you added that.
Yeah, for sure.
Good deal. All right. Any pretty good talk here tonight. Any closing thoughts kind of on your presentation there? Anything we left out?
Thank you to all of you who listen, who protect and serve our local communities. You are so sincerely appreciated by Mike's organization, my organization, and countless other people that you may not run into. You might hear from a lot of the shitheads who give you, flack about stuff. And there are improvements that we do need to make. But that doesn't mean you're not appreciated, especially by us. So I would say that, first off.
Yep, absolutely.
Second of all, it's just that it's never too late, Mike. It's no matter what you've been through from a mental or physical stress, no matter how far you've let yourself go. And even like some of the guys like today and gals today, it was like, man, it was like I am just, I'm a fraction of what I used to be able to be capable of. That might be true, but that doesn't mean that you can't still be healthy, successful at your work. It just might, we have to change the definition of it.
Mm-hmm.
So we were really appreciated. We really appreciated the opportunity to get to go talk to those folks, and really excited about, the opportunity to, follow up with either some of them or, we're already starting to plan for next year.
That's awesome. No, that's a great event. Like I said, it's definitely something we've talked about, getting going here. So I'm glad to see you've gotten to, talk to some of those folks. But yeah, definitely we've got a couple I've worked with down here kind of more on an individual basis, but definitely a population I'd like to reach more down at our place. Cause I think there's such a window for it, such a gap, in physical again, and kind of the, stress management, the fueling, the moving, and the recovering, essentially, of the frontliners. So, love to hear. I thought a lot of good insight into that from you there, and hopefully it grows for you next year. Good deal.
Yep.
All right. Cool. So another good week in the books. That you can find Michele at Fuel, Move, Recover and Advancing Athletics.
Yep, you can get our podcast anywhere. If you ever come down to T County, come see me, down in Tuscarawas County. So, or, sometimes you'll find me at Canton Barbell. So I'm like a Pokemon. I just like pop up sometimes at Canton Barbell.
Good stuff. All right, cool. So we'll plan on doing this in 2 weeks again. Back on schedule, and we'll talk to you then.
Yep. Have a good night, everyone.
All right. Awesome.
See ya.